Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm back with another series of Batman action figures, and this time it is Batman the Animated Series because we have a third wave in the classic animated series line from McFarlane Toys. Now, I've covered a lot of Batman figures this year, and it seems entirely appropriate that I round out the year looking at more Batman related figures because, of course, this is the 85th anniversary of The Dark Knight. Now, a quick bit of context for anyone who isn't aware, these figures released by McFarlane Toys are essentially re-releases of previously existing figures that are actually produced by DC Collectibles about 10-15 years ago. I actually did a whole series of videos covering those figures because I collected them at the time, and I've kind of approached this line as being a sort of second chance offering. There are some subtleties, there are some differences, but it's mainly in terms of paint apps and cell shading. However, this line from McFarlane Toys has introduced a few new characters that were never covered in the previous releases in the form of Build-A-Figures. And this time, of course, we have the Maxie Zeus Build-A-Figure, which I will cover in another video later in the week. However, this wave does mark a departure because we actually have a brand new variant in here that has never seen the light of day before in the DC Collectibles line, and that is today's figure, which is the Lightning Strike Batman. Now, why am I calling him Lightning Strike? Well, I'll get into that a little bit later. But for now, let's kick off by taking a look at the packaging. Now, I have to give McFarlane Toys credit because I really do like the approach they've taken to this packaging. I really love the branding and the style all around. In fact, it's actually superior to the DC Collectibles line, which was kind of bland. And generally speaking, the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse line is pretty bland. But this is really colourful and it's really fun. And I think they've done a fantastic job with it. I wish they did this for all of our figures. In all honesty, this is probably oversized. This seems like a little bit too much packaging, a little bit too big for a 6-inch action figure, and there's an awful lot of space here. But that being said, this is very, very colourful. I think they did a really good job here of showcasing the figure against that powder blue background, and then we have this fantastic animated series logo with Batman in shadow there. It looks absolutely glorious to me. I think they've done a fantastic job. It's really colourful and very displayable, and I just love the way this looks. Now, if we flip it and look at the side panel, you can see that obviously these figures can stack side by side on the shelf, and they look very colourful and very fun. I really love the approach they've taken here of taking a cell or an image of each character writ large, nice and sizable here, very colourful, and as I said, you can stack them next to each other and it looks like a pretty nice, full, healthy collection, doesn't it? And then finally, if we flip the packaging, we can see they've got a similar approach here to the Build-A-Figure, and this is going to be the same on all of the backs of these packages, which is a little bit disappointing, I think, in the sense that it would have been nice to have the individual character that you've just picked up actually reflected here and maybe a smaller image of the Build-A-Figure, but I'm really just nitpicking here. It's great that we actually have this very large image of the Build-A-Figure represented as well. So far in every wave of this series from McFarlane Toys, we've had a Batman variant, and that seems sensible enough. He is the hero of the show at the end of the day, and I have to admit, when I saw this one announced, I had to pick him up because this is the Lightning Strike Batman. Now, it doesn't say that anywhere on the packaging for the figure, but the reason I'm saying that is because I actually owned a version of this figure many years ago. It was a version that was created especially for the toy line by Kenner Toys way back in 1993, I believe. I actually owned this figure and I loved it. It was probably one of my very first Batman figures I ever owned, and I just thought it was really cool. I loved the way that the cape folded around and turned into a glider, and then he had this really bizarre variant outfit that I'd never seen before. So it's really interesting to me that McFarlane Toys are dipping into the nostalgia there, because as soon as I saw this, I knew I had to buy it. And I think it's a really smart move on McFarlane Toys' part, because this means there might be a little bit more life in this line after all. One of my criticisms of the line so far is that, well, I'm kind of dipping in and out. I see it as a second chance line for any ones that I didn't pick up first time around. I'm not planning to really pick up duplicates of figures I already own for the sake of a little bit of paint apps. Very often then don't have the same amount of accessories. Well, this could be a very interesting way of making me commit to this line in a much bigger way, because if they start picking on toys from the 90s, then yeah, I'm probably going to be there for it. Now, in terms of sculpting, as I said, this is essentially just a re-release of the previous Wave 1 Batman and even a tweak on the Wave 2 Batman that we had. So there's not really an awful lot that's different here. It is purely paint apps. Now, I happen to think that this sculpting is actually really good. It's 2 toy lines now, so it can't be bad. But what we notice here, the big major differences, of course, is the use of black rather than grey on the main body. And also the highlighting the cell shading that we see, the blue on the tips of the ears and on the collar. I think this is the opposite side to what we had in the Wave 1 Batman. Obviously, what's really impressive here is the zigzaggy lightning bolts that are painted white onto his body, which look really cool and very, very effective, actually. And the big thing that I really like about this sculpting is the way that they've sculpted in the Bat logo. This is really nice to run your finger along or your thumb along. It actually has proper texture there and it's properly ingrained, and it's very nicely and neatly painted, I have to say. You'll notice on the gauntlets we see a return to that cell shading, that stripe of blue there on the top of the hand and of course on the lower forearm there. Also, one thing I want to point out is that you'll see that the fins on the gauntlets of mine have actually been warped in packaging. Now these are really solid hard plastic, it's not a soft rubber, so this is going to be stuck, unfortunately, so that's something to be mindful of if you're picking one up. And then once again on the boots we see a little bit more of that blue cell shading there, which I happen to really like, but I know it's not for everyone. Looking at the articulation, he does have a ball joint at the top of the neck, so his head will rotate all the way around and it can lean left and right a little bit. Likewise, it can just about nod up and down a fraction, but not an awful lot. There is a ball joint in the shoulder, so the arms will lift all the way up, which is good. And there is a pin swivel at the elbow there, so that lower forearm will spin all the way around and it will hinge to about 90 degrees, not quite, but almost there. There is another swivel, this time at the top of the gauntlet there, so that will rotate all the way around. And likewise, we have another pin swivel, this time at the wrist, allowing that hand to rotate all the way around and hinge up and down. There's a straight swivel at the waist, so he can move from side to side, and he's got an ab crunch in the centre of his torso there, allowing him to bend forwards and backwards. Now this is pretty stiff and there's not a huge range of motion here, particularly when it comes to bending forwards is very disappointing, but he can bend back a good distance. Ball joints in the hips, legs will kick out to the side, they will kick forwards and they will kick backwards as well. And then we have a double joint at the knee, so that lower leg will kick all the way back. Now I should mention there is actually another swivel, this time at the top of the boot, so that lower leg will rotate from side to side. And then we have an ankle pivot as well, so that foot will hinge forwards and backwards and it will rotate from side to side. In terms of accessories, he's fairly light, but he does come with some unusual, interesting accessories, actually, including this additional pair of hands. And these, you'll notice, have sort of gun fingers, like barrel fingers. We'll take a closer look at those in a moment. And then we have this oddity, which again is replicated from the original figure released by Kenner many years ago. I never knew entirely what it was for, but they replicated it very, very well here, although it does look slightly oversized, whatever this happens to be. So looking at those gun barrel fingers, I honestly, I don't know what this is. This looks very, very odd to me. Now, this wasn't part of the original Kenner figure. I don't believe that this costume is based on any source material, so I don't think there's any comic books out there with this outfit in, or certainly wasn't in the animated series itself. Now, please feel free to correct me if something has been produced and I'm just not aware of it. But this looks very odd to me, and I'm not quite sure what the thinking is behind it, how this entirely works. So if you do have any insights, please do let me know. It looks kind of odd, I've got to say, on the figure. It's probably not how I'm going to display this figure. But as I said, if you have any insight, do share them with me in the comments. And then we have him with his oversized grapple gun. I don't know what this is. Again, much like the barrel gun fingers there, I don't know what this is meant to be, but I do know that this was produced with the original figure, so it has some significance. I'm not entirely sure what it is, though. As I said, the only thing I can say about this is that there's no paint apps on it, which is really disappointing. But then maybe it's not supposed to have any. It's hard to say. But he does manage to hold it quite well, despite it being quite a big piece. He can hold it in both hands, and it looks pretty cool from certain angles. From others, it's a little bit awkward and gawky, but I think it worked quite well like this. Okay, all in all then, I'm going to give this figure 4 stars because I think it does exactly what I want it to do. I already really like the base mold for this figure anyway. I've reviewed it in the past, I think it works really, really well, and I think it captures the spirit of the animated series pretty much perfectly. I really love this nostalgia kick, this take on it. I love this variant. It's utter nonsense to me because I don't believe it's based on anything, but as I said, I had it as a child and I absolutely adored it. So for me, this is a very, very special release. I love this colouring. I love these accessories, as strange as they are, but hey, what can I say? I think all in all, this is a pretty successful figure. I think they've done a good job. If you collect these figures, then I think it's definitely worthy of those 4 stars, and it's a really solid entry for what is essentially a variant of an existing figure. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video and thank you for watching this long. If you did enjoy it, please do give it a like, it really helps the channel out. And if you're interested in more videos like this, please subscribe. I'll have plenty more content soon.